For this project, we're going to need fabric, scissors, pins, measuring tape, and thread. It's important that the fabric we choose is thin enough that it'll be able to cowl. We're also going to need paper and rulers for making the pattern. We're going to start by taking some measurements of our body. It makes it easier to use the side seams of your clothing as a base for where we're taking the measurements. Because our dress is going to be asymmetrical, we're going to need 2 different length measurements. Before I make the real pattern, here's a little mock-up of what the pattern's going to look like. We're going to use our ruler to create smooth lines between all the measurements taken. Here are all the measurements we're going to need for our pattern. We're now ready to draw it onto our pattern paper using all of our real measurements. Folding the pattern onto itself makes the cowl part a lot easier to mirror. I'm now adding a 1 centimeter seam allowance, which I'm going to do along all of the edges. We're going to add a 1 centimeter seam allowance to the bottom edge as well. For the back piece, we're going to just trace along what we've created for the front, mark 2 tabs where we'd like it to hit in the back, and then I'm going to take it in about 3 centimeters on each side and round it out evenly. And then we're going to do the same mirroring technique for the piece in the back, and I made it about 5 centimeters higher. The diagonal lines are to show that we're going to cut the pattern on the bias. Now I'm going to measure both hems to create the frill pattern piece. We're going to times that length measurement by 1.25 with a width of 5 centimeters. Placing our pattern pieces diagonally onto the fabric, we're now ready to cut all the pieces out. I also cut some strips out of the fabric that we'll then be using as straps. So here are all the pattern pieces we have. I'm going to finish the 2 top edges of the pattern with a zigzag stitch so that it doesn't fray. With the zigzag stitch on those 2 hems, we're now ready to place the back and front pieces together and pin, making sure to put right sides together so the folded over cowl pieces will be both facing out. And now we're just going to do a regular stitch on the 2 sides. As you can see, our folded over cowl pieces are now facing in on the dress, since the dress has now been flipped right side out. We're now ready to attach our straps. So placing right sides together, we're going to pin the strap onto the side of the dress, just up until the back piece. I trimmed the straps because I wanted them to be a little thinner. Folding the fabric onto itself, I'm going to pin in the seam, making sure to catch all the layers of the fabric. I'm going to do the exact same steps for the other strap, making sure to pin the right sides together up until where the back piece hits. I'm now going to sew on that second strap. Here I'm folding over the straps that I just created, pinning them and getting them ready to sew. Now I'm just going to sew with a straight stitch. Here's what it looks like after having sewn it, and I'm just going to do the exact same for the other side. Folding the fabric over onto itself, pinning in the seam line and catching all the layers of the fabric, and then continuing to pin along the strap. And then sewing just like the other side with a straight stitch. After having trimmed the thread, I just tie the ends in a little knot. Now for the frill bit, I'm going to do a zigzag stitch along one of the sides. Here you can see I'm tucking the fabric to create a mini rolled hem. And now for the other side, I'm going to do a basting stitch, so just the largest stitch that your machine allows you to. I'm now going to pull at my basting stitch to create gathers. And then pinning together and sewing both those ends, I'm going to create a little loop. And attaching right sides together, I'm going to pin this loop onto the hem of the dress. Here's another angle of me pinning the frill onto the hem of my dress. I'm going to just do a straight stitch, and you're all done.